On Thursday morning, in the IDF helicopter that flew Agam Berger to safety back home to freedom, as she was flying from Gaza across the border into Eretz Yisrael, Agam was given a whiteboard and a marker so she could write her first message in freedom. And this is what Agam wrote. B'derech emunah bacharti, I chose the path of faith. U'b'derech emunah shavati, and I returned because of the path of faith. Toda l'chol am Yisrael v'chayelei tzal hagiborim. Thank you to all the Jewish people, to all the people of Israel, to the heroic soldiers of the IDF. Ein kamoram ba'olam. There is none like you in the world. This week has been a truly miraculous week and a difficult week for so many reasons. I'd like to share, in opening, comments from a very special person. This is what she writes, and I'll tell you in a moment who she is. Once I went through a period that seemed difficult to me all the time, at the time. I complained to my father that I was miserable. And my father said, let me tell you what happened to me during my difficult times. This is Rachel Sharansky Danziger, the daughter of Natan Sharansky, the famous Soviet refusnik leader. And Rachel wrote on her Facebook post these words. My father, Natan Sharansky, said this, you think you're going through difficulty? Let me tell you what happened and what helped during my time in the Gulag in Siberia. That sentence alone already helped me because it immediately reminded me how good and easy my life actually was. But what my father said next changed my life far beyond that moment of crisis. And it resonates within me today as more and more stories emerge about the lives of our beloved hostages in captivity. The KGB always wants to break you in prison, Natan Sharansky said. One of the things that breaks you is losing your sense of control over your own life. And indeed, you don't have much control over almost anything when you live in a prison. But I knew that if I felt that I had no ability to influence my own life, I would be far more vulnerable to the KGB's pressure. So every day in prison, I asked myself, what are the goals that I want to achieve? What can I do today, right now, to advance them? My ultimate goal was to be faithful, be'emunah, to my principles and not to break. Not to let the KGB turn me into a tool in their own war against my movement. And so every day I did whatever I could to serve that goal. Sometimes it was very small, like exercising in my cell to maintain my strength, by eating or not eating if I was on a hunger strike, by refusing to speak with an agent. But that was enough because it meant that I still had control over my life. I was serving my own goals and not those of my captors, even if they could decide where I would be, with whom, what I would wear, what I would eat, and so on. This Shabbat, we read Parshat Bo, the story of Egyptian slavery, of plagues that break the Israelites, the story of Pesach. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs titles a commentary on this parsha, The Light in the Heart of Darkness. And that's, I think, where we are right now. As we read about the plagues of locusts, of darkness, and the killing of the firstborn in our Torah, as our eyes are glued to the news following the release of the hostages from Israel, can we find the light at the heart of darkness, the plague of Choshech that has been cast upon our people, our world, and most especially those in the tunnels, the families, and a nation and a people in agony. Our Torah tells of the story of the plague this way. Vayomer Hashem Moshe nateh yadcha al hashamayim vayichoshech al ha'eretz Mitzrayim vayamesh choshech. Then God said to Moses, hold out your arm toward the sky, that there would be darkness upon the land, a darkness that can be touched. And Moses held out his arm toward the sky, and a thick darkness descended upon all the land of Egypt. People could not see one another. Lo ra'u ish et achav. For 3 days no one could move around, but the Israelites enjoyed light in their dwellings. The rabbis teach that this darkness wasn't simply like normal, natural darkness of the nighttime sky. It was different. It was harsher. It was palpable. You could feel it. The rabbis describe it that it felt like a coin, a dinar. It was not simply the absence of light, of sunshine, of moonlight. It was a deep, dark cloud that enveloped Egypt, and that even when the Egyptians would light a lamp or a torch, they couldn't see, and it would quickly extinguish. It was so thick that it was almost impossible to breathe. And we think of those held captive in the tunnels, in darkness, unable to breathe. You may have heard that released Arbel Yehud, who came home on Thursday, that she shared that she was in total isolation for the entirety of her 480 days of captivity. So how could it be that this plague of darkness nearly cracked Pharaoh's stubbornness? The truth is, on the surface, darkness doesn't sound so dreadful. But for the Egyptians, the sun was their dominant element. The sun god was the head of their pantheon, their Zeus, the creator god. And Pharaoh is the sun god's human form. The sun god sustained its presence in the world through the sun disk. And every day the Egyptians believed that the sun god created and asserted power. Aboard a solar boat, which crossed the sea from east to west, from sunrise to sunset, beginning each day as a newborn baby and ending each day as an old man. And at night, though no longer visible, the sun god would enter the nether regions for a dangerous nighttime sail through the realm of the dead, fighting its way through chaos and darkness in order to be reborn again, guaranteeing the existence of our world. So the Egyptians were very anxious about the possibility that the sun god would fail that nighttime sail every night and wouldn't rise again, leading to chaos and darkness taking over the world. And that's why the plague of darkness was so difficult for the Egyptians. Another commentary actually suggests that the plague wasn't darkness at all. There was actually blinding bright light. The great intensity of this light blinded the Egyptians. It was God's pure light. The Egyptians couldn't open their eyes, but the Israelites, through their merit, were able to see that pure light of God, not as a blinding force, but it enlightened them. Professor Zev Falk teaches that this light that shone upon Israel during the plague of darkness symbolized the righteousness of the Jewish people, as opposed to the evil of the Egyptians, and or lagoim, and that our mission still today is to be a light unto the nations, that the light of the Israelites reflects the righteousness of their cause, and the darkness for the Egyptians a condemnation of the way they lived their lives. For the Torah says, Lo ra'u ish et achiv, one could not see one another. The plague of darkness still exists in our world, not seeing another person for who they are, closing our eyes, blinding ourselves to others' plight and struggles and suffering. And perhaps you saw the marches of the hostages through Gaza, with the terrorists cruelly parading them, forcing them upon stages, making them wave and smile, giving them certificates and photos of their captivity. This psychological terror, this darkness, one does not see the other as another, or as the translation could be, a person doesn't see the other as their brother or their sister, even as a human being. This is choshech. This is darkness. So where can we find light? This week, our congregation took 22 of our high school students to Los Angeles on our Hineni Isakowitz Youth Initiative leadership trip. We learned about homelessness, about rebuilding lives, and about recovery. We visited Skid Row, one of the largest stable populations for people who are experiencing homelessness in America. We used water bottles as a tool for connecting. We walked down Skid Row, we met the homeless, and we focused on looking at the stranger in the eye and giving them water bottle, a little something to lift up their lives. It was a humbling experience. It promoted empathy for those who are experiencing a life very different than our own. And we heard stories of resilience and rehabilitation. Our tour group leader, Rabbi Adrian Pasternak, wrote this in reflection from our trip to LA. Watching B'nai Yeshurun students sort donations to support the victims of the Eaton fire was a humbling and inspiring experience. Their energy and compassion filled our room as they carefully organized toiletries and essential supplies, ensuring every item would bring relief to those in need from the fires. As a native Los Angeles or Angelino who has been personally affected by the fires, witnessing your students' dedication to helping affected families is a testament to the power of community and resilience, a reminder of how small acts of kindness can bring hope, light, and healing in times of tragedy. In Israel this week, there was so much light. Every time a hostage was released, we celebrated, we rejoiced, and the streets were filled with joy. You may have seen yesterday Gadi, the 80-year-old potato farmer who came home. In the hospital, his family created a makeshift Shabbat table, and there Gadi recited Kiddush and recited Shechianu alongside his children and his grandchildren. Or perhaps you saw Agam sitting on her mother's lap, or the 4 other women released earlier waiting arm in arm for their now sister to come home. The rabbis teach, why did the Israelites merit to be redeemed from Egypt? Rav Huna said in the name of Rabbi Bar Kapara, Bishvil arba'a devarim nigalu Yisrael miMitzrayim, that there were 4 reasons why the Israelites were redeemed from Egypt. Because they didn't change their names, because they kept their Hebrew language, because they didn't speak Lashon Hara, they didn't speak evil, and because they maintained their faith and their Jewish tradition. When Agam observed Shabbat in captivity, when she and her friends fasted on Yom Kippur as prisoners in Gaza, when she braided their hair, when Leary dared to intervene in the abuse of Amit Susanna, when Miyashem recited Tehillim Psalms with the other women that were in captivity, when Carmel Gat led yoga, when these extraordinary people continued to help one another even under unimaginable conditions, when Gadi clung to the hope of rebuilding Ner Oz and planting potatoes once again, when Danielle cried at night so she couldn't break down during the day and scare her little daughter, they achieved something. They were their own. They took control of their lives. They remained faithful to who they were and to their Jewish traditions. That is heroism and victory. And now I'm returning to the words of Natan Sharansky's daughter, Rachel. Because even if our own struggles pale in comparison to these, the choice to continue orienting ourselves towards our beliefs and goals is one that lies with our hands, all of our hands. Our heroic hostages mark for themselves an inner space where their captors and their captors' goal could gain no foothold, a space where even in an unimaginable reality, they chose who they wanted to be. In that IDF helicopter, as I began, Agam Berger wrote those words, B'derech emunah bacharti. I chose a path of faith, even in Gaza. U'b'derech emunah shavati, and I returned home through the path of faith. Todah l'chol am Yisrael v'chayelei tzahal hagiborim. Thank you to all the Jewish people, to all the Israelites, to all the people of Israel and the heroic soldiers of the IDF. Ein kamaram ba'olam. There is none like you. So who are we today? We are Gadi, the 80-year-old kibbutznik. We are Agam, a 20-year-old lioness. We are a founder of Israel, and we are Israel's future. We can be tenacious and resilient like them. We can be strong and courageous. We have to have those small acts of kindness. We have to see, even in the deepest darkness, that we must live the righteous life that we were sent to be. Because of them, we remember. Because of them, we celebrate. Because we know that we can be the best of who we are, regardless of the situation. Even in this time of darkness, we have to find light, and we have to bring light. On our trip to LA, we met a man named Peter. He was homeless for many years of his life. He's rebuilt his life and become an educator on Skid Row in that center of homelessness. And he gave a message to our 22 teens. This is what he said: be a lamp, be a light, stand high, and in that way your light can shine and lift up others out of their darkness. So that is our message in this plague of darkness, which we seem to continually find ourselves. Don't just find the light, but be the light, and shine that light onto this world. And in that way, we can celebrate together and get out. B'derech emunah bacharti, let us choose the path of faith. U'b'derech emunah shavati, and through that path of faith, let all return home. Amen. Shabbat shalom.